Redistribution Party. Redistribution Party. Redistribution Party. Redistribution Party. Redistribution Party.
We fucked it, lads.
Yeah.
Almost 14 million people voted for a government so right-wing that Thatcher cabinet ministers were urging people to vote against them, led by a racist, thick-as-pig-shit narcissist with less empathy than a spoon. And it was like a Labour loss, not a Tory win. Like, people just didn't come out for Labour. The Tories got basically the same vote they got in 2017. In 2017, Labour got 12,878,000. The highest it's had in decades, but not enough to win then. And instead of building on those monumental gains, we lost. We dropped to 10.2 million. And those people haven't really gone to the Tories. Maybe some of them have. They've not gone to the Lib Dems. They've just gone. They didn't want Labour. In Labour's traditional strongholds, the red wall has fallen. Dennis Skinner, the beast of Bolsover, gone. Laura Pidcock, gone. The wife of the Tory who won her seat, Durham Northwest. Durham, right? The wife of the Tory who won was apparently crying because it meant they would have to move to Durham.
They thought it was so unlikely they would win that the very news that they won made her cry.
Weeping, yeah.
Oh my God.
I know.
I didn't know you were going to do this cold open, and I feel newly sad by the information. Oh, boy. Where did you find out? Where were you for the exit poll?
I went straight from work to do Get Out the Vote in Bury North, which was lost by about 100 votes in the rain and cold. And I left at about 9:30 to go to Manchester to practice for this Christmas show we've been doing, Dougie's Puppets Christmas Carol, which has been great to do because it's like pure comedy escapism. So
it's very nice to have like a panto level show to put your mind into when anything else just leaves you with a bit of a numb sadness.
Yeah, and it's a wholesome, Christmas Carol's like a wholesome story, and it's our interpretation of it. But anyway, so our Ghost of Christmas Past is a floating milk bottle that emits a white light, and that light is triggered by playing a keyboard. It's kind of hard to explain.
No, I think that gets it across.
But so that costume is a bike helmet with this milk bottle, quarter full of liquid on it, with like a white LED inside it, and then black cloth that goes all the way to my feet. So it's quite dangerous. Can't really see anything. So we were rehearsing it, and I was in that. I'm in like darkness. I can't see anything because of this black cloth. And then Jane Edwards just like emits this like grim sigh because we were like, we're just going to focus on. And it was going to be bad because I'd been out in leave seats, which we did a live show, and you were like, you were quite buoyant about.
I think it's also important to be buoyant.
It's important to be buoyant. Yeah, absolutely. Like, until despair gets nothing done, right? Hope gets shit done. Belief in a positive future gets stuff
and you
done.
can even manually decide you need to be you need to almost set yourself up for a fall, because you just need to. Optimism is is fuel for the engine. So you need to go, I need to feel as positive about this as I'm humanly able, because that is going to get me going out more.
It's going to get me going, and it's a way to inspire others as well, which is important. So I sort of allowed. I'd had those flickers of oh shit for weeks, but I tried, like you say, I tried to manually be hopeful, but I did have that oh shit, this is gonna be bad, and then like Jane told me, and I'm in this complete darkness, and then I kind of have to hold back tears. Yeah, I'm just kind of stood there,
well dressed as this kind of milk bottle ghost.
Surrounded by other people with puppets, with a crow on a stick. I think I had a brief rant about there's probably going to be riots. Let's do a riot with puppets.
Would the puppets help or hinder the riot?
Yeah, puppet riot. I mean, that didn't happen because it's raining. You know, the enemy of the working class, rain, and puppets.
One of them,
really, yeah, class traitor rain. But yeah, that's
critical support for the sun.
That's what. Very good. Where were you?
So we'd got back from get out the vote. Realized I'd done about 7.5 hours when we got in. Then suddenly all my muscles were starting to go. I knew just to guard my brain and emotions, and I had been, but I know the people around me had definitely some of them were very optimistic. And I had been out with people from the university, at least one of them was a lecturer. One of them was a lecturer at the university, an Etonian, coming out to this proper working class area and try and talk to people. And that felt like such a meeting of different people trying to talk about politics. And I found that just really interesting. I actually did my first bit of board running. If you're not aware of canvassing, a vast majority of people are knocking on the doors, handing out the leaflets, and then one person just has to write down all the data. And it's so hard to get a handle on anything because we did one clearly very Tory area, and then we did one just a working class area. And so we got really different things. And I'm really aware we're not even knocking on most of these doors. I don't fully know what the criteria are for being on this list. That's opaque to me. So, you have an emotional response to the last 2 doors that you got information from, but you can't draw a bigger picture from it. So I'm just there completely stoical, just going, I don't know what any of this is supposed to mean to me. I hope I'm helping. And then I got back home too tired to do any more. So I just played Pokemon Shield. I feel I'm in my living room. It's 2 hours until the exit poll, and I feel
you used Pokemon
sick.
as a shield.
Yeah, we had a big discussion about whether we should get sword or shield, and we came to the same conclusion of sword is obviously better than a shield. Right?
Oh yeah,
it's cooler.
Yeah.
And therefore, the Pokemon that are exclusive to Pokemon Shield are going to be given this value boost.
They're rare.
Do you know what I mean? That's what I mean.
Supply and demand,
so we've gone for Shield, even though I don't want this dog that's partially a shield. I don't care for.
But what else? Yeah, non-season of legendaries. What else is in there?
Well, I don't know what.
You don't know what the exclusives are.
I don't know what the exclusives are. I'd have to play Sword, which
yeah.
I never will.
Yeah.
I've made my bed. And so I'm playing Pokemon, and then it just gets it's me and my girlfriend, and it gets to 5-2, and we're like, okay, we need to switch on something. What are we going to switch on to? And then we go, okay, we could do BBC, and then we go, no. And then we go,
hard no.
Channel 4, and then we go, no. And then we decide to check out the Novara
okay.
feed.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a compromise decision.
Yeah.
They are at that moment streaming the countdown to the exit poll, but they have audio problems. And I think they're showing the BBC video and the BBC audio, but they've also got maybe the ITV audio overlaid on top of that. So when I saw the exit poll, it was this cacophony of different noises and hearing it weird left, right pan. And then, that rush of feeling. And I think 2 things happened. One, which my girlfriend started crying, basically came very close to tears very straight away.
Fair, yeah.
And that helped me a lot because
I'm quite glad I was under a black cloak when that happened. Yeah.
If I was on my own, I think I would have started crying straight away. But the presence of someone crying faster than me means I kind of shore myself up and go, okay, I'm looking after someone. And actually, it was sort of nicer to be the look after her.
Yeah.
And then I was just like, let's just go to bed. Just went to bed, went to sleep. You know, when you're overwhelmed, you just do a stress sleep straight away. And then, because we went to bed quite early, just woke up at 4 a.m. and I said, should we just start trying to watch all of Peep Show? Trying to think of what would not set us off in any way.
Yeah.
I decided it was Peep Show. Peep Show's good. It holds up.
Peep Show's good. Yeah, I think I prefer being underneath a cloak and hearing the news gently broken by Jane Edwards.
I know. I think I'd hate that
to
because I don't know if I could keep my composure and go back into rehearsing. There's part of me that thinks Jane shouldn't break that. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I asked. I was
okay.
I heard her noise of
so I've got
flashbacks.
I've got flashbacks to when I was running the gig, and then one of the acts just decide to look at their phone and go, "Oh, you know that Nelson Mandela's just died," and then the whole audience was like, "Oh, that's really sad." I'm like, "Yeah, it is really sad. We've got like half a gig left to go."
Well, they did it on stage.
No,
Oh, sorry, you said the audience. I got confused.
I think I was emceeing, and then like they were sat at the back, and they like did a face, and I'm like, I need to know what that is.
Oh, you're on stage.
I think so.
Oh my
and
god,
I'm like,
that's even more bizarre.
is something up? Do you know what I mean? Like if someone's looking like sad or weird or agitated, and it is another act, like I feel like I can just dance. So
Yeah,
if
sure,
anything
yeah,
wrong,
yeah.
Nelson Mandela's just died.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh,
Shit.
I would have much rather that information actually could have waited, you know, an hour and a bit.
Yeah, not really great stuff for a comedy gig either, is it?
And you can't like, spin that into a funny,
Yeah.
gonna riff on that. Yeah, that was like a real mood killer. And then now, like, I've been in that state of like numb, went to sleep really early, woke up, fell asleep again, woke up late. And then I've just had to come to Manchester to do this show. I hadn't fully really engaged with my role, but I'm the ghost of Christmas future, and I represent like a dystopian future of everything that can go wrong in the future. And I'm like, I don't need this. I don't need this role. Can't I be like the talking sprout or something? And I have to do a monologue of like this future where everything's gone wrong. And I'm like, we need to depoliticize this. This has to be like, so now the future I've decided I'm from is a future where the whole planet's shrunk down to the size of Birmingham. And that seems abstracted enough from politics for me.
Yeah.
I don't get the people that like, they've heard the news within minutes. They're like, and here's the analysis, and here's the take, and here's where it all went wrong.
Yeah.
Here's my grand vision of what happened there. I'm like, why are you not crying?
Yeah.
Why aren't you crying? What's wrong with you? You ought to be crying.
You got
now.
to smash out the content, mate.
When does the crying fit into this
Crying
analysis?
isn't content.
Do you know what I mean? I got this like suspicion of people who are like, bang, and here's the take. It's like, where are your tears?
I hadn't slept more than 4 hours for weeks because I've been working on the Christmas show, comedy stuff, Mando stuff, and obviously campaigning.
Yeah.
And like, fuck, man. I was in a delirium last night at the Christmas Carol show, but it felt good.
I could tell you were doing that thing where you were just going hard on energy.
Yeah.
There was a lot of you saying things really loudly that didn't make sense. And I'm like, I know this strat. I've been that guy.
But there was so much, like, I know we're all fucking depressed because of, you know, we've joined the global rise of fascism, which is very bad, and, you know, probably lost our chance to actually reverse climate change. Now, I know this is good stuff, but so much stuff was inspiring about the last 6 weeks, right? To feel part of a movement. I mean, we're talking about hope, seeing hundreds of people desperate, not just desperate, actually genuinely hopeful that something could change and they could be part of bringing about that change. From all, you know, there's a lot of talk of like, oh, a sect has taken over the Labour Party, but it wasn't broad church. You know, there's lots of people from all different kinds of backgrounds and different attitudes to, you know, the left were out. You know, people who were classic Blairites, I encountered some of them out, to people who I know are communists and anarchists, going out in the rain, in the cold,
I think it's incredible
in the dark.
being with people who are like, I think we need to smash the state. I don't think parliamentary politics is a route towards creating the kind of society that we need. And yet they're out in the fucking rain, knocking on every door. And this doesn't even conform. Like, they have made such a huge compromise to be here because in their own minds, this isn't the right way to go, but it can save lives if this comes through.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think it's a really interesting thing of, you know, the kind of the project that Corbyn is an individualized expression of, because it was the only opportunity for it to come about, is this accusation of like, oh, it's a sect, it's this ideological project, this fearsome devotion to Marxism. And it's like, well, it's
such a broad church, though.
It's really not. It's a massive broad church. I'm not some like Labour hardcore guy. No, you're not, are you? Basically, Labour is our tactical vote. And we were helping to. It's our thing that is much better than anything else, and we have the biggest opportunity to bring it about.
Yeah.
I'm not of the view that parliamentary politics is, this opportunity for like liberation, genuine socialism, any of that. I'm under no illusions about any of that. But I do understand that we were fighting against resurgent fascism, and that's the thing, right? This is why it's fucked. This is like one of the many reasons why people are so upset, is because this vote, this time, it feels like people have voted for a resurgent, vicious right. People who have become seen as moderate, like Ken Clarke or whoever, who were key architects of some really horrific shit that was regarded as a massive lurch to the right decades ago, and now regarded as moderates. And all these Tory MPs that are like signed up to support Johnson's Brexit deal are on the right. They're on the hard right. People haven't left Labour for centrism. I mean, ask how the Liberal Democrats do. Every centrist MP who defected from Labour, all the Tories lost their seat. Right?
Yeah.
Joe Swinson's fucking gone. What little joy you can take in that. But they've gone. What's depressing is it feels like the country has lurched. At least 14 million people have been taken in and enthusiastically voted for something truly disturbing. I mean, I'm not saying that's not like my fan. I'm saying that's one of the initial depressing things. I'm not saying it's true that 14 million people are fascists or anything like that.
But it's so I've had that glimmer of like, the glimmers of anger and hopelessness have come from the people that voted for the Tory party, the people whose doors I've knocked on who voted for the Tory party, and I can see where they live and what's around them. I know, I've walked through their community. And I'm like, you think this is the people? Yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah.
But I would say, I think my glimmer of hope comes from the fact that, so before Corbyn, I wasn't one of those Miliband compromise people. I just had no time for the Miliband Labour.
Yeah, controls on immigration chiseled into a rock. Fuck that.
Yeah. And that was when I was just looking further afield for like other stuff to do. And in becoming radical, like before that time and around that time, of being like, no, I get it. Like Westminster, parliamentary politics, the media, parliament, industrial complex is not going to allow leftism through. I know that. And we need to think beyond this simple parliamentary democracy for how the outcomes of leftism can be realised in some way. And then Corbyn comes along. Okay, so I will lend this my support on elections, whatever this can do. And actually, what it can do, even though, yes, it was right, the media, the hegemony, power will not allow leftism to happen. No. But if you just view the Corbyn Labour movement as a recruitment drive to bring randos into the left.
Yeah.
Greater than anything you could do on a mass movement in Britain in any other way. Because not only did it put them on the left and get them thinking about left ideas, even if only superficially, they became part of the left the moment they got ruthlessly attacked. Do you know, imagine you're like a 45-year-old mum and someone goes, we're going to put more money in the NHS and we're going to help shore up some of these things you rely on. And they're like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll be a part of that. Oh, I can deliver a few leaflets. You're just a normal person as far as you see. And then you're seeing implications that you're part of a thug cult. You're like, hang on, I'm just a... What?
Yeah.
I'm just like a normal woman. I live in Warrington. I haven't done anything. I'm putting a few leaflets through.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you see in the papers that you're like an insane, deranged
ideologue, and who's been taken in by a magic grandpa personality cult.
Yeah, and you try talking to certain people in your community about that and going, am I really sort of in the mad? And then people in your community that you thought you were on the level with are going, yeah, you are mad. You're going to send us back to the 1970s. You're like, am I? Is that what I'm trying to do?
Yeah.
like being part of the left isn't just about having a positive conception. I think being part of the left is also being absolutely abused. There is no greater way of explaining power structures than that.
Than experiencing them.
Yeah. I can sit you down and go, oh, do you want to read some Gramsci? And people go, no. Okay. Well, do you want to believe in like a very mild social democracy and be absolutely monstered across all mainstream media? That will place you in a degree of lived understanding that reading can't quite compete with.
Yeah. And I think even more people realise this election. The characterization of like momentum thugs and all that kind of stuff of just, people
thuggishly getting beaten up.
I mean, and even some of that came from the Parliamentary Labour Party, remember, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of, people who've characterised Momentum and just activists who their vote depends on as, thugs or cultists.
Yeah.
People in the Parliamentary Labour Party constantly briefing against their elected leader, and people in the ostensibly left-wing press, like The Guardian, The New Statesman,
Yeah.
are doing the same. And then going, oh, look, the thing we said over and over again is being said back to us on the doors. Oops. Guess that's Corbyn's fault.
I mean, I'd say that oops doesn't, there's no oops. I would have loved an oops. Even an oops. No mea culpa. No, I'm sorry, I won't do it again.
Yeah.
Even just whoops. Or even, oh, did I do that?
Yeah. People going, oh, I won't vote for Corbyn because he's going to nationalise my shed. Or he's going to make the Queen join Hamas.
So doorstepping, I think you've got to sort of be guarded, because I think a lot of people feel like they've gained this immense amount of folk wisdom from doorstepping, whereas doorstepping actually...
Oh, yeah, absolutely fuck. Yeah,
I've heard this real fetishization of the doorstepping.
The PLP love it.
And I keep reading articles that are like, I was a doorstepper. And I'm like, yes, you've been sent to a random grouping of houses.
Yeah, that's only boomers, no one younger than...
You've been sent to a random group of houses. It's already compiled by a system you don't understand. And you've spoken to only the kind of person that'll get into a convo with someone on the doorstep.
Yeah.
I'd never get into a convo with anyone on the doorstep.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah.
So there's whole demographics you can't even speak to, like people who don't open the fucking door. And now you think you've tapped into something. You haven't really. And I also think that human behavior is more complicated than that. And it's more complicated than the things they're actually going to tell you on the doorstep.
Yeah.
But still, nevertheless, beyond that, you are getting something, because it sort of works two ways. Like, the only way that Labour can communicate its message is that you send individuals to every person's front door in the whole country. Can you imagine if that's the way you just have to do democracy?
Yeah, that's the only way you can
of
convey
getting your
information.
message across is if you send an individual to every possible structure in the whole country, knock on the door, and then explain yourself.
Well, and it's not even that. It's like, that's the way you communicate for information. But when you knock on the door, they have already had a negative framing of what anything you could say to them fed into them through their TV, through their phone.
My point is it goes both ways, actually, because the only way really to get that feedback, which isn't similarly distorted, people onlineness is so distorting even of itself.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of people are not happy with mainly the leadership.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about it in a second, but it's still courteous. There was a real degree of courtesy that I wasn't expecting. But even the people that were seemingly very furious, they're not rude. A lot of people just say leadership. It's a floating signifier. It doesn't mean anything specific. I don't like Corbyn. Every tactic you try on that, you learn nothing about what that statement means. You learn nothing about what qualities they do or don't like.
You can't win an argument by going, you've been brainwashed to someone. You can't win an argument.
You've got to do this kind of Socratic thing of going,
why?
What qualities do you like? What do you like about? What do you like about whoever you do like?
The two reasons Labour lost, two short-term reasons Labour lost, are the unpopularity of Corbyn and the different Brexit policy, which, you got to remember, Labour was pushed into changing by Keir Starmer specifically at the end of 2018, and by the so-called moderates, the same people who now are already blaming the left for this, the 20 points ahead, if only we backed Remain crowd. Instead of the manifesto having the positive effect it did last time, and I think there were perhaps flaws on the messaging of the manifesto, but remember, all the poll, YouGov, which is the Tory poll, shows that Labour's policies are really popular.
There's no data to support that the manifesto was in any way responsible for the abandonment of the Labour Party.
Yeah, well, no, all the stuff, the investment, the nationalisation, the abandonment of austerity, redistribution, all of that stuff is popular when polled separated from Corbyn.
Yeah.
So the strategy became... We discredit Corbyn even more. We monster him even more than we did in 2017, and that was really, really effective because you didn't get the same discussion of the policies and it couldn't cut through. So Corbyn became the media image of Corbyn, not the reality of Corbyn, who's this almost reluctant just coincidental vessel for like people crying out, years of warmongering, like a Labour government that was stopping the UN from banning cluster bombs, a Labour government that under the Nuremberg trials, that an act of aggression in war was the highest international crime and they would all be hanged by international law, right? A Labour government that was extraditing people to Guantanamo Bay, that after that, and a generation of people that came up with that betrayal and years of austerity that Labour hadn't challenged on any level, morally or economically, they just accepted it. They accepted its moral and economic premises, that there were people crying out for not even socialism, just basic social democracy. And this one guy who's devoted his life to fighting against wars, fighting for the many, what you could put it, just happened to be the guy that was there, that was the guy that you could vote for, that would make that Labour's policy platform again. That's not a cult. And
he didn't want to. He didn't we've both read like Alex Nunn's The Candidate, right?
Yeah.
He didn't really want it. And he was just like, happened to be there. And also like, there's loads to say about Corbyn. A lot of it's kind of boring. But like the one thing I'll say is, can you imagine someone who is less plausibly the center of a cult of personality? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you could think of any type of person who'd be like, that person can't possibly be the center of a cult of personality. Yeah. He's someone that you ask a question to, and then he slowly smacks his lips and gives a long, nuanced answer that you need to listen to. And people say that's one of his flaws. But the idea that he's this like ringleader of a massive cult, he's like dull.
Yeah.
He's boring to listen to. Like, I think people have gotten confused online because people love doing the whole Papa Corbyn, I love you Corbyn, because he is so kind of viscerally dull that it is funny.
Yeah, they don't understand irony.
It's funny to do that. But like, the idea that this guy is the ringleader of a cult of personality, they're responding to him.
Yeah.
No one's responding to him. Do you know what I mean? They like him because he is there of what the offer is.
These people don't understand like irony of the fact that we've seen them going, oh, you're all a cult, and then us going, yeah, Corbyn. Like, they don't understand that like we might be intentionally winding them up for
because
our
like the sheer absurdity that this character of all people is the head of a cult.
Yeah, but that's the funny thing is that like their reaction to it is like, oh, but that's absurd. This guy's got all these thoughts, and then it's like, yes, that's why it's funny. You fucking idiots.
You've got all the premises of the joke. You've just chosen not to find it funny.
But then. No, choose is charitable. And then the second element is projection of like, they think politics, they have a very different conception of politics than us.
Politics is choosing what colour you want your car to be. So the idea that anything beyond the superficial enjoyment of how this person talks
the leader,
could motivate anyone.
The idea that, we need a charismatic leader. They're like, they think that politics is a charismatic leader and choosing a leader. They don't see it as anything beyond that. They don't understand movements because they're not.
And there was no way of getting beyond. It's not about Corbyn. Like it doesn't matter who's doing it. Like it would. The same thing would happen to someone else.
But also, the fucking Blair purged the Labour Party of anyone who could possibly offer that.
Yeah.
So that's when when they challenged him, they didn't challenge him. But the coup after the referendum with Owen Smith, who wanted to fucking. Revoke Article 50. I wonder how that would have gone down electorally, right? Brexit would have happened in 2017. There's no fucking count. Basically, there's Diane Abbott, John McDonnell, and Jeremy Corbyn were what was left of the Labour Party after a 20-year project that rooted them out and ruthlessly inserted their candidates wherever they could into. Because that's if we want to get to. Obviously, right? Okay, we accept, and everyone knows, I think now, that the media is so hostile. Like they did Miliband on how he ate a bacon butty, right? They're going to go after anyone. You don't go, okay, so how is the strategy to appease this monster by giving it a thing it wants? No, right? It's how do we bypass that? And that's really, really hard to figure out because, as Sean's saying, just literally manually going on knocking on doors. We did that on a massive scale. And it's not enough. But if you want to criticize Corbyn, it's kind of lack of ruthlessness, both in media performance and in political strategy within the party. he had chances to like absolutely wreck Johnson either in debates or outside it, and he was too much of his, it's his flaws of like, the reason people like him is he is unlike other politicians. It's a double-edged sword thing of, we like him because he's not ruthless, but then he is insufficiently ruthless for politics.
But also,
so both in rhetoric, he won't go on the attack on Johnson, and that it wasn't. I know it's like a moral high ground, but I don't think it was working. The movement of which he was an expression was begging for him to achieve hegemony on the party, right? Years of the Parliamentary Labour Party undermining the leadership it makes him look weak, and that is a thing. The idea of weakness. The idea of Corbyn as weak is. Yeah, it's his considered thing, his nuanced thing, and part of it's from like racists who don't think they think patriotism means loving war and blah blah blah. But also his, the ambiguous, nuanced Brexit position that fucked Labour over, that we were baited into by the sort of Remainers. That comes across as weakness. It's all characterised as weakness, and I do think that is a legitimate criticism of Corbyn. Is that. And this is going to sound crazy, but the problem with Corbyn isn't that he was a Stalinist. It's that he was insufficiently Stalinist.
This is what I'm going to say. It's like, I have no like major criticisms of what our strategy was. There were loads of things that could be better, loads and loads and loads of things that could be better, but nothing in particular where I'd be like, that's the thing that lost it for us. There was like sort of an impossible situation. And I know it's sort of a cop-out to be like, well, surely if you lost, you did something wrong. Well, you sort of don't always have to have done something major wrong if you were put into an impossible situation. Triangulating on Brexit just was like square in the circle, and then the media monstering was like ramped up to 110. Yeah. It was good to have tried the Corbyn thing. It was good to give someone out who you'd be like, like, how could they possibly monster this kindly old guy who's been advocating against anti-racism and like putting in the good work
on the right side of everything.
On the right side of everything, you'd be thinking, how could this one go wrong? So it made loads of sense, and I don't think we should be regretting that. But now that we have done that, let's just get someone fucking ruthless in. Yeah, let's just go the other way and just get someone that plays the game. Because previously under Corbyn, I was thinking, if you got someone in who was like wildly charismatic, all this cult of personality stuff was actually going to start sticking because they're projecting it onto someone who would be like that. But if you get someone on who actually is, they'd be like, now that stuff will stick and it will cohere and make sense, and it'll at least partially be true, because that's the whole point of getting a charismatic personality, is because they come for the charisma of who's this exciting, dynamic person I'm now seeing on the TV. That is the whole point of having such a leader. So that criticism now won't just stick, it will be true.
Yeah.
But we've also been criticised. I mean, Corbyn's been criticised for everything and the contradiction of that thing.
Yeah.
But
that
at least someone ruthless for the left isn't an appeasement to the media monster.
But and it would appear consistent as well. Like, we talk about Corbyn as like having these values, but he didn't actually relentlessly defend them in the party. He kept continuously appeasing the Labour right, who would never, and they wouldn't ever reward him. His first cabinet, he filled it with broad church people, and then they got the knives out on him real quick. Like on Syria,
I felt like he just didn't
Hillary
have
Benn.
that option in his toolkit of just.
He didn't even
that is
think
the
of
final
it.
straw.
He wouldn't even think of it.
He didn't have that final straw moment for anyone.
No, he just a few months ago. I know Tom Watson went, but Landsman at least started to get ruthless and was like, we need to fuck this guy off. And then bottled it because Corbyn, backed off. But that should have been done in 2015. It's what Blair did. We were all like, there's a lot of like, in the sort of centrist press, there's a lot of like reification of Blair, and Blair's the only Labour leader that's won in 45 years or whatever. And it's like, okay, but like if we take analysis of what Blair did, you're saying you think it's just like charisma and hating immigrants or something, right?
But it's not. You have to do a massive back end purge.
Yeah, you
need to be sending round like an army of whips. You need that's the Stalinist approach that Corbyn was criticised for, but he lost because he didn't adopt it.
Yeah,
he lost because he didn't do the very thing you criticised him for. So now when we do it, you won't have that criticism to make because you've just used it on someone it doesn't apply to.
Yeah. And just to clarify, like we're saying Stalinism, but to mean ruthless pursuit of political aims, like achieving control of a party. Like one of Corbyn's aims was democratising the party, which he failed to do. Like if we'd done that, the PLP would have to answer to the membership, and wouldn't need to be disciplined from the top, but would have to answer to the membership rather than see them as leaflet deliverers they don't have to pay. Poor media performance is probably even in the context of like a horrible media, I think is a legitimate thing. But that's there because we knew that about Corbyn. No one has a cult. Certainly us two don't, about Corbyn, beyond like
it was a transactional relationship.
Transactional relationship, right?
I wanted something from this guy, and he was offering it.
No one else was offering it.
Yeah,
and remember, like the Labour Party under Corbyn has become the biggest left-wing party in Europe, when all the others have been in complete decline across the entire continent. Like the last centrist that's like won was Macron in France, who now has. He's like, it was deeply, deeply unpopular and has fascists polling higher than him. And he only won because he was against the fascists. So it was just pure, no one voted for Macron out of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Right?
He was if Hillary would have won.
Yes, he's what if Hillary would have won, right? And Corbyn represents this huge 500,000 member movement. And again, that's where we can get valid criticisms of, yeah, you know, hundreds of people were out on the doors this election, and that's completely inspiring. But where Labour, I'm saying we here because I'm still in that like mode of like
it's
election
so.
mode. But,
I found that so much that like me and you have been making this podcast, and the more the elections approach, the more I've started identifying with Labour because I have to.
Yeah,
now,
this isn't
right?
a Labour podcast,
and it's, right. But but my brain started going that way just because I was being so absorbed in it. The stuff I normally tweet is normally just the radical politics I hold. And then suddenly around the election, I'm like, oh, that's a bit too far. Should I rein that bit in? Even during like putting out the podcast, I'm like, is this what I'm saying and stuff? How does this all help the campaign? I'm like really narrow-minded in this. And I think that's fine. Like I'm not critical of myself for it. I had a very specific goal that I thought was of the utmost importance
for the last month
everyone I know and love. So it's fair enough that I rein myself in. But now suddenly I'm like, oh yeah, of course. I do think that Westminster politics is never going to be it's like what I'm saying about the recruitment drive. Like the future of the left, the reason it didn't work out, media monstering went beyond what I thought the maximum limits for it were. It just got ramped up. And not just monstering, just like nothing now made sense. That what was on TV just didn't correspond to what was happening.
By the end of the election, Boris Johnson was trusted on the NHS more than Corbyn.
Exactly.
If you actually look at what these two men have done, is bonker town. Your bonker bucket is full to the brim, right?
It's sloshing over.
It's sloshing
My bonker cup overfloweth.
That is not a reflection of reality, but so it felt like we were being trolled. So just to go back to the emotional experience of the election, right? It felt completely, increasingly bizarre to see the whole media constantly telling you the reverse of what you knew to be the truth, and sticking stuff like the idea that the kid in Leeds, the Leeds hospital, was like a faked thing by Labour. Yeah. What? But that was everywhere. Loads of people got that in their brains.
And like
the punching. A Labour activist apparently punched one of Matt Hancock's goons.
Yeah.
No, it didn't happen, but it was everywhere.
The election was like punch drunk with lies that reached 5 million people and small apologies that reached 100,000.
Yeah. But what that was doing to my mental health, right? Was that doing you in? It was so stressful because you're already anxious and stressed because you're like, this is the fight for our lives. And then you see the media just going, because that's why people so fiercely were getting really, really angry, is it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
God, what the heck are you doing?
So, I'm going to try and link it because I think media monstering and the Brexit were like the two major factors in my mind. But their relationship, Brexit is like the tip of a upcoming culture war, right?
Oh, we're in it.
But I mean, it when the iceberg of the culture war hit the Titanic of our country.
Okay, yeah.
Like the iceberg is how it forced its way, and Brexit became like the prism through which the culture war reflected light into every violent colour you can imagine.
Yeah.
Walking around canvassing, you are suddenly like got your like they live goggles on, and you're now looking at houses and communities strictly and solely through the prism of politics and social division. And when people come out and they're talking about Brexit, the Brexit stuff cuts through my predictions of how people would vote based on what I can see as their material circumstance. Material circumstance, once you start having a culture war, your material circumstances stops being one of your main predictors for how you would vote and what your politics are, because you start identifying with something really abstract and cultural, not just, oh, I'd like there to be like shops nearby and a job that will provide my family and a hospital I can go to. You start thinking, oh, I'm like a true Briton or whatever that means. The media feeds into that, because when the media stops corresponding that clearly to like the material reality as well, because the media helps lean into this idea of culture. The fact that we have Remembrance Day, I don't know if that's the right line to choose, but like once the media isn't giving people clear facts and people end up confused, they don't know what's in the manifestos. They don't know what's being promised to them. They just have these sort of cultural ideas to work off. And so Brexit and the lack of clear dissemination of clear ideas means that people are corresponding their votes not to just, oh, I'd like more money, oh, I'd like more resources, or I want my living conditions to be better. They're voting based on this very cultural thing. And that's the hard thing to break through.
I would go as simply as where we fucked it was in Leave voting seats.
Yeah.
And
but isn't that? But there's a precursor to that in the diagnosis of what are so many working class seats doing voting Leave. That's already
well, that's what I'm about to
try
explain. And I would not emphasize the media as you have. I would take a completely different angle.
Okay,
right. So where Labour's collapsed in its traditional heartlands is in where people voted Leave.
Yeah,
and that's what's changed. You know, if you were compare 2017 to this election, this was the election Theresa May wanted. Theresa May, we might crush the saboteurs, Daily Mail front page, right? Yeah. What she wanted in 2017 was she expected Labour to back Remain because 2/3 of Labour's membership and the vast majority of Labour's voters are Remain voters, because she knew that under a first past the post system, Leave would smash it. That didn't work, and it didn't work because of the strength of the leadership at that time. As much as we can have all these other criticisms, they went, we'll honour the referendum, right?
Yeah.
Completely nixed it. The debate has to become about something else, right? The debate has to become about all the great stuff that was in the 2017 manifesto, right? You know, the manifesto is the same this time, but it didn't work because our Brexit policy was shit. It was ambiguous, and we abandoned those people, right? And as much as certainly the Labour right, the PLP are now going to characterise the reason those people voted Tory and the reason they voted Leave is because they hate immigrants, right? They're going to try and launder their like racism through them, as we've talked about in Phantom Gammon, right? Yeah. It wasn't, you know, take people at what face value. The big thing people said when they voted Leave was stuff about sovereignty, right? And people, that's true, right? And they voted for a thing. They voted to bring back power toward them, away from an economic bloc, and they do understand that, right? Okay. Perceiving the European Union as undemocratic and distant isn't part of a culture war. That's true. And then the Labour Party basically was seen as two things: weak and betraying that. It didn't become a Remain party, but it was perceived as a Remain party by these people and characterised as such by the media.
Well,
totally correct.
Second ref is has been a Remain stance for a very long time.
Yeah. Do you know the last time that Labour was polling ahead of the Tories? January 2019, a few days before we first proposed a second referendum. Obviously, it was voted down, but from then, that's when we started to collapse, right? And I know, you know, but I can see why they did what they did, because they were going, oh shit, most of our voters are Remain. Yeah, on a first past the post system, we're fucked by the Leave vote. But maybe this central position to reunite the country, because the country is bitterly divided by the culture war you just described. That compromised position was born out of, we're fucked if we go Leave again, we're fucked if we go hard Remain. And the problem is they went ambiguous, appeared to have, again, that feeds into Corbyn's a weak leader, Corbyn's a bad leader, the ambiguity. Yeah. Corbyn is viewed as a weak leader primarily in the Leave areas because he's weak on, guess what, Brexit, right? And those two things are like interlinked. But why? Go back to why the Leave vote happened. The Leave vote corresponds directly it correlates with the impact of austerity, right? That's one thing. The second thing is that we could not, in a few years, recoup the losses. Like Labour has atrophied in these traditional areas since 1997. We couldn't reverse 2 decades of people not trusting politicians, thinking the Labour Party doesn't represent them anymore, and feeling totally disconnected. We couldn't reverse that. Again, I'm saying we. I'm going to keep doing it for shorthand, right? In 4 years.
Do you know when we're talking about like people sort of duping you and going, "Oh, I'm Labour to my bone," but I haven't outvoted for them in a very long time. Well, they're not being duplicitous. I think they still identify as Labour. Do you know what I mean? Like the identity of Labour cuts so much to the heart of the working classness in that area that it's almost divorced from what the Labour Party is. I'm Labour because I'm working class and I live in the north.
Well,
yeah, fine.
It's kind of, it's amazing that inspired people from the cities are going out to these areas in their hundreds to canvass. But obviously it would be preferable if hundreds of people from that constituency were out to canvass. The complete decimation, and it is a bit of a generational thing, right? Because young people leave these areas. You know, as I am from North Wales, right? It went Tory, right? Vela Clwyd. Leave to go to uni or to fight to go where the work is, right? So they're in the cities, and that's where Labour does well. And that actually is a working class vote. A working class vote isn't a 55-year-old shoemaker or what, you know, whatever the fuck. It's also like a 21-year-old barista, right?
Yeah.
But the movement was decimated by Thatcherism. The Labour movement, which people would have that tribal connection to, was completely decimated tactically by Thatcher, right? That government completely eviscerated so think of these communities, right? And how everything would revolve around the union and the working men's clubs and it would be the hub of the community. It's not just, it's almost apolitical, but it's where the comedy club would be.
Yeah.
It's where, there might be a jazz band on, for, going back decades now, right? That was completely decimated. That's gone, right? And the kind of amazing stuff that's been done by Momentum, the ideological thugs, right? Yeah. They've done amazing stuff, like particularly Manchester Momentum of putting on plays, football stuff and stuff that's like rebuilds this sense of community and that like almost tribalism, right? In a positive way. We no longer have that in these communities. We had the echo of it, right? From the decade after Thatcher, but there was a chance to rebuild it with Blair after the landslide in 1997. But every election, 97, 2001, 2005, 2010, they lost millions. It went from like pushing 14 million, the landslide in 97, to like 9 million or something when Brown lost. And it was those people in those communities. That's where it was already creeping away then. How we get that back is the future of the left.
So this is something else I've been thinking, which is that tactical destruction of the Labour communities, those community hubs. I think there was a real emphasis on this manifesto will bring you in because this will give you the life that you want, but it's not enough to roll back that damage.
It's a retail offer. It's not. That's not how politics works.
Yeah, exactly. So what needs to happen is, the same strategy of we have this underneath our offer of what we are, and again, I'm now using we, but underneath whatever the retail offer is of here's what you can get, there is an attempt to use momentum, use a grassroots movement with this strategy of rebuild these communities, create community. And if community can exist, if solidarity can exist, or even, an attempt to create some of the desired outcomes of the left outside of the parliamentary system, with those outcomes being solidarity, community building, collective organisation, mutual aid.
I mean, the essence of this is, do you know what should have happened after 2010? The Labour Party should have been running the food banks.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
The Labour Party should be a movement. It'd be a Labour movement, a movement on the left. And if it wants to succeed, the way to bypass this media that's never going to be on our side, by an hour, I mean, not the Labour Party, the working class, right, is to build that counterpower in those communities. And it's going to have to be different. But you know what, Manchester Momentum, the best Momentum, has done amazing things in Manchester, but they wouldn't necessarily work in Bolsover. You know, maybe you got an older, you know, maybe you need to have like a backgammon club or something. I don't know, right? But you need to calibrate for the community. But it needs to be working class culture. Working class culture is the route to the success of successful working class politics.
Great. That's good. That's what we need. We need a new working class culture that brings people together. That's the project.
How do you do that? I haven't got the answers, but I know that's what we need. Mm-hmm. I know that's what we need, is to rebuild the connection with these communities. And that is why we lost, is because these people feel like they have no connection to politics. They couldn't believe, and again, they've not flipped and voted Tory. The Tory vote from 2017 is the same as it is now, right? Gone. They've just gone from us. There's going to be some people who flipped, right? I know have done it over Brexit because they feel betrayed, 100%. But they've been allowed to feel betrayed because they have been betrayed, not just by Corbyn on the Leave vote, but by the Labour Party going on decades. And a legitimate criticism of Corbyn and this Labour Party is they did not rekindle that. Mm-hmm. That was the promise in 2015, million member movement, bring back working class culture. And there's been attempts to do it, but it's failed. And that is how we win. And building that will be, you know, the sense of solidarity we had in these last few weeks. If that was a part of your day-to-day life.
Yeah, that would feel good. And also it creates a place for a project for people to get involved in. People who are sick of politics right now with a capital P, to get involved in a project that would improve the country, that feels apolitical and will bring solid rewards just by virtue of having done it.
Yeah. And this, by the way, is why we do not now allow the centrists, the Labour right, to gain any fucking ground, because this is their fault. The New Labour project abandoned the working class. They are the reason these people think they can't trust politicians. They are the reason that people may not have even thought they deserved Corbyn's manifesto this time. They thought it couldn't happen, it couldn't be real, right? They are the people who, after 1997, had a unique opportunity to rebuild working class culture and reintroduce universalism and dismantle Thatcherism, but they didn't. They continued it. Unemployment never went below 4% in order to discipline the working class. That Labour government, the new Labour government, destroyed hope. And it continued Thatcherism, and yes, it did a whole bunch of other stuff in terms of reducing child poverty and the minimum wage and all those great things, right, which we'd be better off with now. I completely concede that, and I'm not blaming the Blairites to excuse Corbynism. Like I've said earlier, the limitations of Corbynism. I'm just putting this in a long-term context, right? But none of the stuff they put in radically undermined Thatcherism. So the frame everyone's still in is still what Thatcher achieved. Thatcher waged a class war and fucking won. And just because the Labour Party only started fighting back since 2015 and done so insufficiently, they are my criticisms of Corbynism. We have not fought the class war properly. The leadership has been weak and has not fought hard enough for the left against the people who would block it inside the Parliamentary Labour Party, the people who are to blame for these problems, who had 13 years of power to fix them and instead made them worse, and whose greatest victories, unlike Attlee's NHS, were easily reversed as soon as a Conservative government got back in. We cannot let these people go back in control, because what their argument is we need retail politics. We need a charismatic leader that, you know, hates immigration enough, and we need to roll back our offers. But do you know what? That's the reason we have a resurgent right. Everything we're reaping now are the seeds sown by Thatcher and further nourished by Blair. Anti-immigration rhetoric, the decimation of working class culture, the abandonment of universalism as a principle, right? We cannot give any ground to these fucks. We can learn from the mistakes we've made. We've 100% made mistakes. But the solution to where we are now is not a retreat to the politics that gave it to us, that gave us these problems. Because they're going to try. They're going to shift from blaming Corbyn to blaming the manifesto, to blaming the activists, thousands of people enthused by a message of real hope. They're going to attack us, the thousands of people that mobilised in the last few weeks to fight tooth and nail for a radical government, a Labour government they hoped would finally act on some of the horrible problems that plague this country. The so-called moderates in the PLP, the writers in The Guardian, the New Statesman, are going to take this tragic election loss, which was lost because Labour adopted the Brexit policy they wanted, which was lost because of the pantomime villain mirage of Corbyn they painted, are going to attack us. As we weep, they smile. Even though the Lib Dems tanked, even though every centrist defector from Labour and the Tories lost, the argument's going to be, we must return to the centre. This is, unfortunately, the difference between us and them. We're on the ropes and they're coming for us, and they know now is the time to punch, but they've got no solutions. They have nothing to challenge the rise of fascism other than throwing immigrants under the bus. Yeah, we lost. We fucked it. But empty centrism, the reanimated corpse of Blairism, disconnected from people in Durham and Bolsover, is not how we win.
So that's good, right? Because that means there's a roadmap.
Yeah.
Like, to be able to understand what's happened and understand, I think people may be divided about whether or not we should be critical of what's just happened. But if we couldn't criticize it, then that's hopelessness.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? If
yeah.
nothing went wrong and we still failed, then fucking hell. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there are things that could be better, and there are things that can be better in the future. And right now, things look grim as fuck. But understanding how they could be better is, I mean, that's the hope that's always driven the left.
Yeah.
And understanding how and why and what it would be for things to be better than this.
Just do stuff together, right? Go to comedy.
Community, I think.
Community, rebuild a community. Do anything. But Dungeons and Dragons, five-a-side.
Make a group WhatsApp for your street.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that because the thoughts about building a community, and this maybe should be another episode, but like thinking about plausible reasons to spend time with people on your street. I don't know anyone on my fucking street. Do you know what I mean? And there are loads of reasons why I would have done in the past. I used to live in Sheffield, Hallamshire. I lived next to an old working man's club. It was only really attended by the Bowls Club. And the management didn't know how to put things on that would make people come to it. It was just rip off Paul McKenna psychics, occasionally the wrestling, or a Duran Duran tribute band. No one in my majority student borough of Sheffield is going to come to any of that. But it's a massive, beautiful old hall, and it's just there. It's just there.
These buildings are all still everywhere.
We could have gone into it and done something, but what? That is the question that we can think of when we are sick of politics and spend time with people in a local area and do. Politics is not the ballot box.
No.
Politics is who lives next door to you and what's happening down the street.
Politics isn't fucking Westminster. Westminster can be a reflection of what's happening in wider people's lives. And that's where we should start. That's where you improve and rebuild the movement, is outside Westminster.
Yeah.
And the reason we failed is because, bizarrely, a Labour Party led by this guy who's been part of movements all of his life. Yeah, he built a movement, but he didn't build enough of one.
So let's just sort it out.
Come on, lads. We can do this.
We honking.
We honking, baby.
Do you think that Corbynism is dead?
It's not Corbynism. There is no such thing as Corbynism. There is socialism,